We tend to think of our careers as, a list of jobs on a resume. But what if it's more than that? What if it's really all about the story we tell ourselves and the world about what we do?
So I've got a question for you. What's the story of your job? Seriously, think about it. Is it a story about passion, about changing the world? Or is it a story of practicality, about paying the bills? Is it a calling, or just a stepping stone to something else? The answer, well, it's a lot more powerful than you might think.
Because these stories, whether they belong to a whole company or an entire profession, they aren't just fluff. They have huge, real-world consequences. They literally shape how we deal with everything from amazing opportunities to devastating crises. So let's dive into two really fascinating case studies to see how this all plays out.
All right, first up, we're going to look at how one single company can be telling two completely different stories about itself at the exact same time.
So this comes from a study by the University of Bath. Researchers decided to peek behind the curtain of a UK-based tour operator. They wanted to answer what sounds like a simple question. What is this company's identity? As it turns out, the answer was anything but simple. The company in question? A place called Lascarina Holidays. And their whole deal was selling trips to what they called the real Greece. The unspoiled islands. And they were really, really good at it. In fact, check this out. A whopping 60% of their business came from repeat customers. I mean, that is some serious loyalty. People absolutely loved the story Lascarina was selling. But which story was it exactly?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. When the researchers started talking to everyone, from the founders at the top to the reps on the ground, they realized there wasn't just one story. Nope, there were at least two big, powerful narratives running at the same time. And sometimes they were totally at odds with each other.
Okay, so here's the breakdown. On one hand, you had what they called the utilitarian narrative. This was the no-nonsense business is business story. It's all about profit, efficiency, and delivering a product. But then, right alongside it, you had the normative narrative. And this one was all heart, all about a deep passion for Greece, about ethics, and about supporting local communities. And you can really hear that utilitarian mindset in this quote from the reservations manager. He's basically saying, look, it's a juggling act. Sure, it's nice to do good things, but let's be realistic. At the end of the day, everybody's also thinking, hey, what's in it for us? It's a totally pragmatic view. But then you get a completely different vibe from the co-founder, Kate Murdoch. She just comes right out with it. I am a great believer in right and wrong. Simple as that. For her, it wasn't about the bottom line. It was about having a moral compass. So inside this one company, you've got these two identities, business and passion, constantly doing this little dance.
Okay, so that's the story of a company with two minds. Now, let's zoom out. What happens when it's not two stories in one place, but one single massive story that defines an entire profession? This next one, it's really powerful. It comes from a study of U.S. airline pilots who were furloughed, basically laid off, after the September 11th attacks. I mean, talk about a crisis that doesn't just take your job, it shakes your entire sense of self to the core. So to really get what makes a pilot tick, you have to understand this concept the researchers call it the Phaethon dream. It's that classic childhood fantasy, right? The dream of soaring through the clouds, the freedom, the power of being up in the sky. For them, it's way more than a job. It is a genuine calling. And just listen to how a furloughed pilot named Karen puts it. This really hits home. She says flying isn't just her job, it's also her favorite hobby, and admits that it's probably way too much a part of my identity. For her, and for so many others, the line between what they do and who they are has just completely vanished. So this Phaeton dream acts like an identity anchor. It gives them a really strong sense of purpose and self. But here's the twist. When a crisis hits, like getting laid off, that very same anchor can do one of two things. It can either hold you steady, or it can drag you straight down to the bottom. And that is exactly what happened. The pilots split into two groups, each with its own narrative. First, you had the moving on group. These folks worked through the trauma, they retrained, adapted, and they found a way to take back control. But then you had the stuck group. For them, the job loss was an open wound that just wouldn't heal. They felt completely powerless, just waiting to be recalled, desperately hoping their dream would be restored. A pilot named Raj is a perfect example of that moving on story. He says he made a conscious choice to retrain. He looked at himself honestly, saw where he could improve, and he worked hard to build new skills. He essentially grabbed the pen and started writing a new chapter for himself. But in stark contrast, you have someone like Doug, who really captures what it feels like to be stuck. Listen to this.
He says the need to fly sort of permeates the DNA. For him, it isn't just a choice, it's part of his very being. And if you believe something is literally in your DNA, how can you even begin to imagine a different life?
Okay, so we've seen a company with two conflicting stories and a profession with one all-consuming story. So what's the big takeaway from all this? And more importantly, what does it mean for you?
Let's boil it all down to 3 key points. First, like Last Arena holidays, the places we work are often juggling competing stories, the practical versus the passionate. Second, just like the pilots, an entire profession can be defined by one powerful dream. And third, and this is the most important one, these stories we tell ourselves are what determine how we respond to challenges. They dictate whether a crisis becomes a catalyst for growth or a catastrophe that just holds us back. The narratives we live by at work, whether they come from our company or from deep within ourselves, they have real, tangible power. They build the reality we experience every single day. So the final question is this: are you the one writing your story, or are you letting someone else hold the pen?